to use your song She Dominates for the past, I think, 5 years now. I'm trying to think. Let me see. I think it was in 2000 and I want to say 18. So 18, 19, 20, 21. 5 years, Blitzkid has allowed Mistress to use She Dominates for my radio show, which is actually perfect for me if you think about it. And I think those fellas actually, one of them I think was living with a dominatrix. That's where that song She Dominates came from. So it's kind of interesting. So it's pretty fitting. And, of course, I want to thank Spunk Lube, one of our sponsors for the show, as always. They've been sponsoring the show for probably about, I want to say, 7 years now. So I'm pretty happy with them as a sponsor. So it's kind of cool. And, you know, if you were listening to the show tonight and you've never listened to my show before, oh, I feel like I have to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Mistress had a sneezing attack just now. Oh, pretty bad. So I don't know. I think I'm having some fun, you know, like kind of listening to people's like things about how that they always tell me about on the internet, how they like the show and stuff. And kind of interesting, you know, and to that aspect of it. Actually, on Instagram, I was on Instagram earlier today, and I had saw that, oh God, where's the screen? I had saw that somebody actually liked one of my photos, and they wrote like a whole bunch of very nice comments on it. So, of course, I want to thank you for kind of liking and making comments on all my photos. It was very nice of you. And I think you said you were going to be listening to the show tonight, so I hope you're listening to the show. But I don't know. Let's see. What other crazy subject can Mistress... Oh, sexual fetish. This is kind of an interesting topic. This is what I was going to talk about tonight. So it's kind of interesting, a sexual fetish, right? How many people know what a sexual fetish is? Here's what I would say, but while you might like the sight of any partner or in a pair of high heels during sex, whether it's a male or a female, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a shoe fetish. It just means that you have a fetish based on the sexual excitement in response to an object or body part that is not typically sexual, such as shoes or feet. It's mostly common with men, like men love and have foot fetish. Most of them do, right? Some people, when they see this type of fetish, like people with like, I could be walking around at like a BDSM convention and there could be subs like sticking their hands in their pants, like playing with their pricks or trying to masturbate while looking at my feet or even smelling my feet or even, you know, rubbing or tasting the objects, whether they put their tongue on it or they rub my feet, they smell it. Some guys in the past even told me they had a fetish for dirty shoes and socks, as well as sweaty, unwashed, dirty ladies' feet, which I thought was kind of hilarious. I don't know. In my whole 32 years of being a dom, I have done that. I've had a submissive once who had extreme foot fetish, and I had just come out of work, and I had said, well, you really want to lick and smell my feet? They're pretty rancid. And he was like begging me, so I was like, okay. This was like probably like 20 years ago. And my feet were pretty rank back in the day, really sweaty from working in a dental office, standing up all day long, running around like crazy. And it was hot, and I think actually I had a pair of dirty socks on, if I remember this day, and my feet stunk so bad, almost like Swiss cheese with holes in it that you could see like the green mist coming out. That's how bad they were stinky, like stinky cheese feet. And this fella literally sat me down and was like, listen, just relax. He takes my shoes off, very gentle, takes my foot out of the shoe, almost like Cinderella treatment, right? He peels off this stanky, sticky, cheesy smelling sock, and then he proceeds to put my foot in his mouth. And I was like, oh my God. Now, mind you, I've had my toes sucked in the past, but this guy, he literally licked my feet like a fucking rack of ribs. Like, I'm not even kidding. It was hilarious. I just sat there and laughed the whole time. I thought it was pretty comical, actually. The guy, like, literally licked my feet like they were a fucking rack of spare ribs with barbecue sauce on them. And I have to say, it was pretty pleasurable. I mean, think about it. I'm standing up for like 10 hours a day, working as a dental assistant, like looking and working in people's mouths, running from one end of the office to the other, and wearing a pair of dirty socks on top of it. So you can imagine, like, old, dirty, sweaty socks back on, like, clean, showered feet, walking around sweating all day and then things. Now, if there's people with foot fetishes who are listening to the show, try not to jerk off at my next description, because I can at least imagine, like, what you guys are going to be doing then. So, running around in sweaty, stanky, like, fucking socks. He literally, this guy sat me down, propped up my feet on an ottoman. Like, it was pretty cool. I didn't have to do anything. Unlaced my shoes, opened up the shoes, took off my sneakers very carefully, put them to the side, like in a neat, like, didn't just throw them, like, anywhere, and literally, this fucking sock was, like, saturated, and let me tell you, when he took my shoes off, I could see green mist. That's how bad these feet were stinky. And then he peels off the socks and literally puts my whole foot in his fucking mouth. Like, I laughed so hard, but actually it was quite refreshing, I have to say. I don't know if anyone's ever had, like, a human tongue on their foot, but it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a soft, velvety suction cup to some degree, right? Licking mistress's feet while she's, while she's hanging out over there. So it was kind of interesting. So, this is where they talk about, like, this guy had an extreme foot fetish. He was licking my feet, smelling my feet, sucking my toes. He was caressing them. And then at the end of the foot appointment, he had asked me, I said, well, do you, and he wasn't jerking off or anything. And he said, no, when I go home, I'm going to jerk off thinking about how I sucked on your toes all for like an hour. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, I have the thought in my head. And I think at the time I even took a couple of photos. He brought like one of them disposable cameras, the little Polaroid ones they used to have. And I think I took pictures of him with my feet in his mouth. So he had some souvenirs to take home to... He probably still jerks off to those photos. I guarantee it. So the most common fetishes now. People can fetishize almost anything. There's like fetishes for shoes. There's pocketbook fetish. There's panty fetish. There's, lingerie fetish. There's leather, PVC, latex fetish. There's also mohair sweater fetish. There's a hair fetish. There's a fart fetish, eproctophilia. There's a doll fetish. There's a fucking fetish for everything, right? So think about it. How many fetishes? There's tons of them. So according to most fetishes involve body parts, feet, or body features. Some people even have a fetish for obesity, like heavy guys or heavy girls, like BBWs or BBMs, piercings or tattoos. The feet are I'm like Mistress is tongue-tied. The feet are the most excited, crazy fetish that people actually go for, the most common. Body fluid, body size, hair fetishes aren't far behind. So the feet, body fluid, body size, and hair fetishes are pretty much in the same category as foot fetishes, right? So now here's another interesting thing. After the body parts, things you wear, like I was talking about, skirts, footwear, underwear, panties, pantyhose, stockings, right? Now here's another one. There's a fetish for nylons, like a nylon fetish, or people like rubber, latex, satin, PVC, If I'm forgetting any, just chime in. You can call in and ask, remind Mistress. Leather, PVC, latex, satin, what's the other one? Plastic garbage bags I've seen people wear. It's like unbelievable. There's cosplay. Some people like to dress in furry animal costumes, right? Like animal cosplay. To me, I'm not really into that, but one time I did have a sub or two who came to a pro-dom session when I was first a dominatrix and about 16, 17 years old. And I never forget this like it was fucking yesterday. The guy came into the dungeon and he was dressed in a poodle's costume. And another one was dressed as a pink pig. Needless to say, I had fun with both of them. The one that was dressed as a dog, a poodle, I walked him around on a leash around the whole dungeon, on all fours he was. And then he was standing over by the door barking and wanted to go outside. So Mistress decided to take her little poodle for a walk down the street. And basically, he had lifted his leg and took a pee-pee while outside, and a policeman had come over to us. This was in the city. So, needless to say, he got a ticket for indecent exposure and urinating, and I had to go back to the dungeon and explain what happened to the client. The other time with the pig, I wasn't allowed outside with him after the first time. So, Mistress had to take the little piggy inside. So instead I did 3 little piggies went to market. I had 2 other house subs wearing pig masks. We had planned this ahead of time after the guy came with the mask on. There used to be like a store like near the dungeon that had like Halloween masks. So my friend went in there and bought like 2 cheap pig masks, and we put them on the house subs. So I now had 3 little piggies in my dungeon. And 3 little piggies in my dungeon, wee they go. So basically, myself and 2 other dominants got to torture them all night long with clothespins and whips. And we tried to reenact some of the 3 little pigs scenario with each one, like put one in a like a standing cage, like then we locked up another one in like a dog crate with straw, like for the straw house. It was pretty funny, actually. But, those were my 2 kind of experiences with people dressed with cosplay. I really haven't had anyone since then. Although I've had worked with online submissives who thought it was pretty funny to send me photos of themselves dressed as horses, fairies, maybe Smurfs of that nature. But I really haven't gotten anybody like that in years that has actually, came to me with some shit of that nature. So it's pretty funny. Some people say that sexual fetishism is a disorder, but by definition, it can reach a level that causes intense, lasting distress, okay? So whether somebody is doing this by themselves or with a partner, if they're happy with it, then it's not an issue. People in the vanilla world think sexual fetishism is kind of a disorder. I guess it is to some degree. And what I mean by that is it actually, a lot of people use this as sexual expression, but some people say they are desperate, compulsive, and sometimes distressed by their behaviors that people actually commit suicide. Now, I don't know how true that is. I have heard of stories of many cross-dressers and transvestites or trannies that kind of a limbo in between. And they try to do all these different things to make themselves happy, but sometimes they commit suicide. But I guess that's with any person or any walk of life. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, somebody with a sexual fetishism disorder. But I guess to some degree, you have to look into it. Because like I had said, that one submissive earlier that I had talked about in the show, he had a lot of mental problems. And I think by the time he was in the BDSM community for 2 years, and by a year and a half into the 2 years of his lifestyle, myself and other dames who had tried to train him, we all said the same thing, that he had like a sub-frenzy, but it was beyond a sub-frenzy. He had like a mental disorder. And I think he had like autism. He was high